Welcome to Knowledge 3, where we're talking about the ancient Greek civilizations. And we are on lesson number 8, where we're going to talk about a thing called marathon. And that word actually probably sounds familiar to you, and we'll talk about why that word is familiar to you. But before we do that, let's go through our vocabulary words for today. Again, I will read the word. You will repeat that word after me. Independent, summoned, mission, grand, Spartan, ideal, democracy. Which of these is one of the contributions that the ancient Greeks gave us? It's what we talked about yesterday, and that contribution was democracy. Which of these would you use to describe something so impressive, kind of like the Parthenon? Well, you probably could use two, but I would think of the word grand, or maybe even the word ideal. I think both of those fit. Grand being this super impressive, ideal being almost perfect. Remember, when we're going through these Greek civilizations and talking about the Greek civilizations, we're going through these 5 components, and we've filled out a lot of these components in our chart so far, and I want to show you our chart now. Before, we really had nothing, and now look how full our chart is. Again, we've talked about jobs. There's 3 different jobs they really focused on. There were more, but we just focused on 3. We talked about how a key component was their religion, where the gods lived on Mount Olympus. There's 12 of them, and they did different things to honor them, like the Olympic Games, or building a really big building like the Parthenon. We've talked about 2 city-states, Sparta and Athens. We had the leader yesterday. His name was Pericles, and he was one of those first leaders that were voted in and who spoke out for democracy, and that leads us to the contributions. We still have the Olympics today, which is amazing. The Lincoln Memorial is a contribution because it's based on the Parthenon. And then we have democracy. And guess what? If the Greek civilizations were never existed ever, we wouldn't have any of these things at all. That's crazy to think about. We'd probably be ruled by a king. So before our read aloud today, I want to ask this question. What was the farthest distance you have ever ran? I'll admit, I am not a runner. I think the farthest I've ran was maybe 3 miles. And let me tell you, big struggle. So we're here in ancient Greece, and today we're going to be talking about an enemy of the Greeks. I know it seems like they've been living a perfect life, but they actually have an enemy. And I want to show you this for a second. This is the map. This orange is where the Greeks lived. Then on our map, there's a sneaky little word here. And this little green area, well, I'll show you in a minute, it's not really little, is the Persian Empire. And the Persians were the big enemy to the Greeks. So here's the Persian Empire. Now I have to zoom out the map. I just want to show you how much the Persian Empire, how big they are, and how massive this empire is. You ready? So this would be considered the Persian Empire. So you can see Greece right here in the little green area. And this is how much the Persian Empire was and how big it was at that time. Kind of scary for the Greeks. And it is a big nation. So we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about a battle that was fought between these 2 empires. So after today's reading, you should be able to summarize the main events and explain the significance of the Battle of Marathon, and also demonstrate understanding of the word tribute. So as we listen to the story Marathon today, I want you to listen to find out about another Greek contribution that resulted from an encounter from the powerful, huge Persian Empire. Again, and as you listen to this, there is a reason why I asked you what's the longest or the farthest you have ran. Here we go. The Persians are coming! The terrifying news raced through Athens like a rapidly spreading fire. The very name of the Persians meant terror to all the Greeks. Why do you think the Greeks were afraid of the Persians? Well, I know one thing I would be afraid of is because you could see those two maps. Look how huge that Persian Empire was. That means they had to take over those different countries and sweep through them. So they were a dangerous group. And now King Darius had sent an army of Persian foot soldiers and cavalry to punish the Athenians. Darius was angry that Athens had helped the other Greek city-states fight against Persia. So why did King Darius want to punish the Athenians? Remember, although the Greek city-states were their own little countries, they still helped out other city-states if they were in trouble, and that's what the Athenians did. A fleet of 600 ships had brought as many as 20,000 experienced Persian soldiers to a beach about 26 miles from Athens, near a wide flat plain called Marathon. Again, when we talk about this, we're talking about this battle that happened 26 miles away. There are not enough of us to face them, moaned an Athenian army general. Besides, no one can beat Persian soldiers. But another Athenian general, a man named Militarities, you can see him right here, Militarities, pointing at the map. Militarities answered, "The Persians fight for a king most of them have never seen. And who cares? Who cares nothing for them? We fight for our freedom and for the freedom of our children. That must be worth something in battle." Now, in those days, the Athenians had 10 elected generals plus another military leader called a polemarch. Callimachus, the polemarch, gathered along with the 10 generals, including Miltiades, to create a plan of defense. One of the generals said, "The plain of Marathon is a perfect place for the Persians to attack us. There is room for their horsemen to move around us, and there will be nowhere for us to go to avoid or keep away from them. They're well-organized soldiers fighting on foot." Another general suggested, "Let us send our fastest runner to Sparta. The Spartans are the greatest fighters in Greece. If they will help us, we might have a chance." Why would the Athenians want to go to Sparta and have the Spartans help them? But it was 150 miles from Athens to Sparta, and some of the journey included rugged mountains and streams. The generals knew they would need a runner who was fast and strong. "Phidippides is our man," the general agreed. "No one in Athens can touch him for speed over a long distance." So they sent swift-footed Phidippides to call on the Spartans for help. Why did the Athenians send their fastest runner to Sparta? Then the generals called together all 10,000 Athenian men of fighting age. In every Athenian home there were tearful goodbyes. At last the Athenians started off toward the plain of Marathon, about 26 miles away. Meanwhile, the Persians were camped on the beach near the edge of the plain of Marathon. The Persian commander in charge told his men, We will win such a great victory here for King Darius that the rest of the Greeks will simply surrender to us. The Persians were so confident their commander took no special steps to guard his camp other than sending the cavalry off on their horses to search the area a few times a day. As all this was happening, the strong legs and powerful heart of the Athenian messenger Pheidippides carried him towards Sparta. Pheidippides uh, as ran as he had never run before, stopping only a few times to drink from streams or rivers. He ran for almost 3 days until he reached Sparta and the two Spartan kings. You must come with your armies at once, or it will be too late, he exclaimed. Can you imagine running for 3 days, over 150 miles? To his honor, or to his horror, the Spartan kings answered, We cannot leave before tomorrow. Sparta is in the middle of a religious holiday honoring the gods, and our law says we must finish before we can leave to fight. So the Spartans were doing a 9-day festival called Carnea to honor Apollo as the protector of their cattle, and they could not go and help the Athenians. By then the battle will be over, and we will have lost, Pheidippides exclaimed. He set out again on the 150-mile track, carrying the news to the Athenians as they would be on their own, that they would be on their own. As it turned out, this was not true. As the Athenians marched toward Marathon, 1,000 Greeks from another city-state, having heard the news, joined them. Together, the 11,000 Greeks marched over the mountains to the plain of Marathon. As they did so, Pheidippides arrived to say, The Spartans cannot help us. The generals were horrified. The Persians' army is much bigger than ours, with many more soldiers, one pointed out fearfully. We should surrender and beg for mercy, cried a second. There will be no mercy, the general said. The Persians are here because we helped other Greeks strike back against them. The Persians will not stop until they have destroyed us. Do you think the Athenians will surrender to the Persians or fight for their freedom? Do you think they will win if they fight? The 10 generals voted. Should they surrender or should they attack? Each side won 5 votes. Then the general remembered something. Callimachus was allowed to vote, too, the general told him. The decision rests with you. You will decide whether we surrender and agree to serve the Persians, suffering all that this will bring, or whether we will fight and live as free people. Well, he trusted the general. What do you think? He asked. The general answered, If we do not fight, the people of Athens will be frightened too, and will surrender the city to the enemy. All of Greece will follow, but if we attack before fear sweeps through our camp, I believe we will win. Well, then let's fight. Luck was with them. The Persian commander had sent his cavalry off again to make sure no other Greek armies were approaching. While the horsemen were away, the Greeks spread out in a wide line. The Greek general purposely put more men at either side of the wide line, leaving the middle. You kind of can see here, here's the Greeks, and the middle was the weakest part. Then, shouting a loud battle cry, the Greeks charged. Do you think this strategy will work and that they will win against the Persians? The Persians were startled. No one ever ran towards them. Nevertheless, they moved forward toward the Greek. Look how weak those fools have left their middle, laughed the Persian leader. but the laugh was on him. For just as the Greeks had planned, the Persians moved to the middle first and pushed back the Greek line. But then the stronger Greek forces on the edge circled around and attacked from the sides, catching the Persians between them. The Persians, confused and unable to defend themselves, turned and ran for their ships, with the Greeks hot on their heels. In fact, the Greeks captured 7 Persian ships before the Persians could even reach them. The other Persians sailed away. "We have beaten the mighty Persians," the Greeks told one another in amazement. Then they remembered their families waiting for news at home. Legend says Phidippides proudly volunteered. "I shall carry the news." Who was Phidippides again? He set out again, leaving the scene of the battle at Marathon, and as he reached the gates of Athens, the people gathered around him. He was just able to gasp out one word: victory! Then his great heart, which had carried him to Sparta and back, finally gave out. Phidippides fell dead at the gates of Athens. In tribute to Phidippides, the Greeks measured the distance he had run from Marathon to Athens, and those 26 miles became the distance of their long-distance races. So a tribute is a gift or a compliment that is given to honor or remember the contributions of a particular person or group. Why did the Greeks want to pay tribute to Phidippides? And this is why today we call a long-distance race a marathon, in memory of Phidippides and all those who fought for freedom on the plains of Marathon. So today when people run, so this is a picture of people running a marathon, it means they're running a 26-mile race because that's the distance between Athens and the plain of Marathon, where they won the battle. So let's go through our comprehension questions. Why did King Darius of the Persia purposely send an army of soldiers to Marathon, about 26 miles from Athens? So when they sent the news to when Phidippides ran the 150 miles to Sparta, why did the Athenian generals send Phidippides to Sparta? How did the Greeks win, despite their smaller size and no help from the Spartans? Why was a tribute given to Phidippides, their runner? So actually, when I was watching this show from the National Geographic about the Greek city-states, and they were talking about this Battle of Marathon. And a really cool thing is every year they have this thing called a Spartathlon, and this Spartathlon is actually another tribute and honor. And there are people who run the 150 miles from Athens to Sparta in honor of Phidippides. So let's watch this quick promotional video about this. Let's skip to it. So what a cool video, and a couple things you see. They're running through whatever storm or whatever things going on, and then at the end of that race you saw those people kissing that foot of that statue. That's actually a statue of Phidippides, and they're running and they get to that statue, and it's kind of a tribute or it's an honor to him. So our word for today is the word tribute. I will read the word, you repeat it after me. Tribute. So what is the vowel U saying in this word? It's saying the U sound. Anyone know how it's saying the U sound? Well, it's saying the U sound because there's a U consonant E. So that means it's a U magic E. How many syllables is this word? Tribute. It's 2 syllables. You want to know what the word tribute means? Well, tribute means it's a gift or a compliment given to honor the contributions of a particular person or a group. Here in the United States, in Hollywood, you'll walk down this kind of this sidewalk, and to honor some celebrities who have just done some great things or have big accomplishments, they have a little sidewalk tile that's a star with their name in it. So that's a way Hollywood shows tribute to some of their actors. Marathon races were named as a tribute to Phidippides. It's his 26-mile run and his role in the Battle of Marathon. Can you think of a person you would like to give a tribute to? So as we look at our Greek civilization chart, we are talking about one of our categories, which is contribution. And that contribution, remember, contribution means something that ancient civilization started and is still used today. And that was the race of a marathon. It was that 26 miles, and that's still being ran even today. Many, many times a year, there's marathons. So I want you to talk about, and write a sentence talking about the contribution of a marathon. So why is there a why? So one sentence you could say for the contribution of a marathon could be that it's an honor, or it's a tribute to what Phidippides did.